Time has come once again to speak as witches, and wizards and spirits do. I'm Daniel Dubois,
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 3, Manasa Devi. So, we're going to start this one also, just like last episode. We're going to start this one with a meditation. So, let's see. She ready? All right. Now she's ready. She's like, whoa, no, hold on. I'm like, okay. Because, quiet time on an audio podcast is always great. All right. Okay. Just as with the PEP, I'm going to ask you to picture a light. And this light is going to be a light that when you see it makes you feel receptive to information. And then we're going to breathe, and I'm going to give you a 5 count. In the first 5 count, you're going to breathe in that light. On the second 5 count, you're going to hold your breath and you're going to let that light saturate into your cells. And on the last 5 count, you're going to breathe out. And what the light pushed out of your cells to make way for itself, you're going to exhale out. And we'll do that 3 times. So let's start. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And final time. Bring in the light. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold the light in, let it saturate your cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let everything else out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. I am Manasa Devi. What I want more than anything for you is for you to be who you truly and really are. And I also want for you that you bring it out to the world so everyone knows who you truly and really are. I am the goddess who has always been underviewed, unappreciated until time was needed, but was not given the respect I deserve. Today, I want you to have the gift of being respected for who you are and seen and valued for who you are. I am the goddess who came about in a different way, a way that was not respected and seen as valued. But now I am a valued goddess. I bring healing and I bring true self-insight and self-value to those who worship me. I ask of you to have that same confidence in yourself, that same inner sense of worth, and that same desire to show it to the world and have the world come and see you and adore who you are. That is my blessing for you in this meditation. All right. And with that, exhale one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can come up. She's ready to speak and continue with the episode.
I
So
really
that was,
like that way of setting everything up.
mm. Yeah, well, after APEP did it, I know when Manasa Devi showed up, she likes me to use her full name. She was excited about that concept.
Hmm.
Again, not as excited about the intro that Chat GPT wrote for her, but still. And like I said, and it's true because it's almost like the shortcomings of ChatGPT, if you will, is that it's trying to please. And
Mm.
so it won't necessarily look into the nuances and dig deep and even find something that might sound insulting on first listen, but actually is a higher praise, just as long as you take a second to think about it. So it won't do those kinds of things. And Manasa Devi doesn't like false praise.
That would seem to be a problem, putting those two together. Hmm.
Yeah, because even when I looked at it, I was like, I was like, that's to use the vernacular, that's weak sauce.
I
You
haven't
know?
heard that before. I like that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I also came up with the variant of one of my nephews was teasing another nephew. We were playing pool and he was calling him weak sauce. And then my nephew queued up his shot and he sank the ball. And I says, that's some jalapeno weak sauce there.
Uh-huh.
But yeah. So for those of you not familiar with Manasa Devi, she is the Hindu god of snakes, healing, venom, specifically venom used to heal poisonings. So her whole big thing is the taking what's making you weak and turning it into something that'll make you strong. Is a good way to look at it. And since a lot of that is about, your self-esteem and your care for yourself and letting yourself actually be who you are. Like I've been saying for a long, long time now, we're talking like decades. I told people the best way to stay healthy is to be true to yourself. This way you're like I say, right? Your subconscious is your resource manager. And if your resource manager doesn't think you're on task, it's not going to release all the resources necessary. It's going to hold back for when you actually decide to get on task. So the more you are true to yourself, the more you're on task, the more resources it'll free up for you to be healthy.
That's an interesting concept. Hmm. Okay.
Well, from listening to people who are dying and from listening to people who are sick and people who get more sick and who linger in their illness, it's always that they're not prepared to either go back into the world or there's something really deep bothering them. And that sickness gives them a time to either step away from the world. You know, they need to be sick more than they need to be healthy because it's the only time they get a break. But that has
Well,
consequences in
yeah,
the long run.
yeah,
So,
I can see that.
yeah.
Hmm.
Stuff like that has made me kind of start paying attention to it and seeing how that works out. But even like, whenever you're doing things you don't like, when you're not following I don't want to say following your bliss, but I'll use that term. You kind of like, you're not giving up your resource, right? But it's like this, right? Anytime someone gives you a task that you don't want to do,
Right.
you basically do everything but do that task. And it takes longer, it
Hmm.
takes more effort, you're more wiped out at the end. But if it's a task you love, you can keep going for days and days and days doing it, you know.
Well, that also works with human design, right? Because if
Right.
it's something you love, if it's something that aligns with you, then yeah, you can actually do it for days and days. Time disappears. Um,
Right.
that's an important point to differentiate between when you're doing something because you can
Mhm.
and doing something because you love it. There's a massive difference, and I think people get stuck quite often in, well, I can do it, so it's right for me. I'm good at it, so it's right for me.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the case. Not at all. If you're good at it, but there's no spark, there's no
Hmm.
magic, if you will, then
Yeah.
that is not your that's your zone of excellence. It's not your zone of genius.
Right. And right. And since, if nothing else, we are instructing about magic here. So this applies to magic, right? Because your subconscious is your resource manager, and it works for both the mundane and your connection to the spirit world. So if your subconscious isn't into it, it's also not going to release resources on the magical side either. So
Right. I
so
think
that's
it's time for people to consider um, what calls to you, as in, is there a spirit or a deity that you are drawn to, you're interested in, you want to know more about? And, we're going to be offering up all
mm,
kinds of samples, if you will, from different places. But be on the alert for what works for you. When you hear that this one is the goddess of snakes, for example, does
mm,
that have you running for the hills? Or is that, oh, that's interesting, I like that. Or is it just not going to do anything for you one way or the other? Like, where does it land? Make a note and, continue on.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because depending on the descriptions I've read of her, because like remember, me and Michaela had no idea who she was last week.
Nope.
We had to figure it out. I mean, I couldn't even pronounce her name. So just to give you an idea, right? Like these named spirits are showing up, not because we know who they are necessarily, but just because because they want to make their voices heard. So like, and so I'll give you like some descriptions of her. Like personally, I see her as a blue-skinned woman whose bottom half is a snake, right? And I thought maybe at first a naga or something like that. And then we figured out it was Manasa Devi, but that's not how she's portrayed. I've only ever seen one picture of her looking like half snake, and that was a more modern picture. It wasn't like an old painting or anything like that, or any old
Hmm.
statue of her. Normally, she looks like just your what you're expecting of a Hindu god, but with regular skin color, not blue. But I see her with blue skin, but that represents her, the divine nature, the blue skin.
Right.
So to me, she's showing up full on divine, even if she's not normally portrayed that way.
Yeah, she is soon enough if somebody's afraid of snake bites. Then
Yeah.
they're pretty quick.
Well, that's the thing, right? In my research, that is what I found. I don't know if it's there's one place where her worship is pretty heavy, but there's also a lot of snakes there. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Those two things would definitely
yeah,
go
and
together.
so she's definitely worshipped for that aspect of you know, for the dealing with poisons. But my experience with her this week has been, oh, you have an issue with this thing. Well, how can I make it worse for you so that you face it, so that you deal with it? And so, like I was telling Michaela, it's like she's been following me around with like these little precision tools, picking at my nervous system, setting off IBS attacks and stuff like that, and you know, muscle spasms and that. And I'm like, and that's been my whole week. I'm like, holy crap. But by the same token, I've learned to not to panic over it or not to get over, because that's like muscle spasms come from your unrest inside, right? Which shows up in your nervous system, and IBS is an exaggerated stress response after some damage has happened, but it's still an exaggerated stress response. So part of her work was like, okay, well, here it is. Are you going to panic or stress out every time I do this to you, or are you going to learn to handle it and just take it in stride? So that's been part of my week. But she's also made me hyper aware of the true value of things, or what things are really are, despite outside appearances and again stories people tell you on top of those things.
Mm.
So actually, one of the more amusing and interesting thing was because so both my brother and my sister are both going with their spouses and they're going to Europe. And so I had the pleasure of watching them both groups pack. And what I noticed is, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, I mainly see it in women, but I'm sure there's men who do this too, but it's the packing seems like a fight, but what it actually is it's a group event, and I want you to be as excited about these things and planning as I am. And then usually because guys don't care, like, yeah, we'll pack whatever, we'll go, right? That's why I'm saying it that way. That's been my experience with that. I've never really seen a husband or a boyfriend worry about the packing. So, but that was one of the things.
Interesting.
That usually when I listen, it's just like, okay, does everything have to be dramatic here? Like, what's going on? But it's like, hold on a second. Wait, what's deeper? What is really at the depth of this? Because it's the I need you to be on board with the excitement that comes with this. And yes, drama comes with it if you're not on board. It's that
Yeah,
internal.
I think that's a particular thing that you have come across though, because I don't know that that's everybody's experience. I mean, I've been moving my entire life and packing and what have you. Um, and some of the most fun trips have been where I've thrown a few things into a backpack, made sure I got my Visa card,
Right.
and off you toddle. And one of the things that I'm very pleased about is that both of my boys learned how to travel with nothing more than a backpack and
Right.
end up in a country that they don't speak the language and so on, and they'll be fine. And that was important to me that they be able to do that. So I think some of it depends on what the trip means to the person before they
Right.
go on it, and how important is it to that person to have everything they need. And that's actually a pretty cool metaphor for magic, because are you the person who needs to have all the bells and whistles and everything lined up, and you got just the right incense and the candle colors correct, and you got your crystals, and are you that person? Do you have to have it written out for you? Or are you the one who says, you know what, I'm going to grab that twig over there, and hey, look, I found a feather, and here's a white candle. I'm just going to carve a rune in it, and that'll do great, and off you go. So, where do you fall in that, listener? Because there's nothing wrong with either of those things, but the one does inherently require more physical work, more preparation than the
Right.
other. Both require clear intent and motivation, as we've said all the way through the podcast. But, if you're the one who just, grabs the nearest thing or wants to and hasn't been brave enough to do that yet, like you can grab whatever works for you that's speaking to you right now for the spell you want to do. It's fine if that's your
Yeah.
style. And that
Well, that's the
person
thing.
perhaps would be more likely to be a lone practitioner, and the one who hacks to the nth degree for the trip is likely to be more of a person who would prefer to be in an organized space, a coven, or group of people called whatever they want to call themselves.
Yeah. It's there's actually a lot about magic this week too, working with Manasa Devi. Like so it's like this, right? I've not been practicing doing spells for a long time. Like I usually just stayed away from it. But one of the big reasons is like, I believe everyone should have their freedom. I don't want to do anything that really controls anything. But one of the weird things about it is that when I was being trained, or however you want to look at it, conditioned, cultivated, however, by my trickster teacher, a lot of it was about controlling things, and a lot of it was about, uh, do I want to say manipulation? But anyways, not, but basically taking power in an environment.
Here's the thing with that word manipulation,
Yeah.
right? I had this conversation twice in the last 2 days, so that's it's clearly up and running right now. Um, Manipulation in and of itself is not a bad thing. We do it all the time. You do that to your environment in order to have things work the way you want them to. You manipulate your conversations in that if you don't, it's called having no filter, right?
Right.
You just blurt out whatever is on your mind, and that's likely to not land well. typically speaking, because we think stuff we don't say. So manipulation has many levels, it has many faces.
Hmm.
Again, just like with any kind of magic, what matters is what's your purpose? What are you doing it for? What's the outcome that you're working on? So, kids of divorced parents, for example, will 100%, without fail, play one parent off against the other. That is a manipulation. It's also a natural born thing that they do. Why? Because they're trying to make the environment work for them. This is how you survive. So it's not a bad thing, but it is a thing that you have to be aware of. So manipulation as a concept is not a bad thing. It's when you manipulate others that is not good for them, detrimental to them in some way, and you're going to be okay. Like you're making it good for you. Look at the politicians we have now, for example. Perfect example. They don't give a
Right.
rat's ass about anybody else but themselves, and so they are manipulating left and right with no care for the outcome. That
Right.
is a manipulation of the lowest order.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? So, and I've been saying for a long time, like this discussion had come up, and someone was saying, well, someone had told me so and so is manipulative, and I would say, well, you know what? I'm manipulative too, but I do my best to use my powers for good. Like, and then I kind of went on explaining that, like, if I want to teach someone something, I have to be able to set it up so people can get the idea I'm trying to convey to them. So I have to set things up and I have to push them and I kind of have to guide them in a direction where I want them to be so they can receive. I want to put them in a state of receiving, so I have to set the stage for that.
Mhm. Well, in neuro-linguistic
Right.
programming, which you won't be stunned to know
Mm-hmm.
I've also studied, in NLP, that is basically it's manipulation through words. And, one of the most common is pre-framing something. So
Right.
thinking of teachers in school. If a teacher in the classroom has given the lesson and then they say, okay, any questions? Nobody's hand's going to go up.
Right.
Not happening. Nobody wants to be that kid. Nobody wants to be the one that asks a question in case they get into trouble, etc., etc. Now, same situation, same teacher, same kids. And the teacher says, what questions do you have? Now you've just pre-framed an expectation that there's going to be
Right.
questions. And if you're doing that in a one-on-one situation, it's even more powerful
Mm-hmm.
because that recipient is going to get the message that, oh, I have to have a question here. What's my question? And they'll try to come up with one, whereas any questions gets a zero response. So if the teacher wants to get out of the classroom and go on a break, they're likely to say, anybody got any questions? No? Okay, fine, off you go. Right? It's a very
Right.
different energy. It's a manipulation, absolutely.
Right. So that's kind of what Manasa Devi challenged me with this week. She goes, you manipulate, you do use manipulation, you word things, you try to bring someone to an understanding by knowing what they're like and trying to hit those points in them to get them to understanding. So what's the difference with using magic?
This is why it's come up so much for me this week. Okay.
Mm.
Um, yes. And it's the same thing. It is a manipulation, if you will, while in relationship, which again, manipulation tends to be, but it's a manipulation of the environment. You want to attract the things you're working on, or you want to make something happen, um, hopefully that's beneficial for everybody without challenging anyone else's free will. So
Right.
that's the thing is you can lie to yourself, as people do, and say, well, I'm doing this for their own good. And if those words come floating up to the surface,
Right.
that's nonsense. You're lying to yourself at that point. If you're doing something that takes away another person's free will or even restricts it in some way, you are not doing it for their good. You're doing it because you want a particular outcome, regardless of their free will. So it's the nuances within manipulation that's important. It's the nuances with magic. It's like, no, you don't just get carte blanche to run over people and then say, well, I did it for your own good. That's
Right.
bullshit. Own it. That's just bull. And if that comes up for you, then I would suggest you take a little retreat, even if it's in your own bedroom kind of thing. Take a little time out to look at that. Why is that coming up? Like, what triggered that? Where did it come from? Because that's not a good place to operate from. So, if you're impacting somebody else's ability to decide for themselves, that's not okay. But if you are guiding them on a path where the door is right there to be open, it's a different thing, right? You're not
Right.
making them open the door. You're not opening the door and shoving them through it. It's a different thing if you're just holding the flashlight and saying, there you go, it's right there.
Yes.
Come have a look, you know?
Right. Because my example for this week is that I'm dog sitting right now, and I'm having a lot of hard times with the youngest dog because the oldest dog is not helping, making it worse. But since I can't communicate directly and they don't have an opportunity to for direct communication, Manasa Devi is also challenging me to why don't you try some magic and see if you can make smooth things out between the two of you to make it easier for the dog to understand what's happening. Because that was a big push all week was that, or since I started dog sitting, was the dog doesn't understand. So what can you do to help? So it's like, and then she's like, you want to use magic, so why don't you use magic? You're not doing it to manipulate like you're not doing it to control the dog. You're doing it to facilitate communication and understanding. So,
Right. And that's a good example, very different from the examples I've been using, so that the listener can sort of consider, well, where does what I want to do fall on that spectrum? Right?
right.
It's like manipulation, like autism, it's a spectrum, right? So you've got the full on, I am absolutely going to bend you to my will kind of end of manipulation. And then you've got the, well, if I do these things, you'll be able to see that my intentions are good, right?
Right.
There's a whole different energy there on that spectrum. And we all fall in different places on that spectrum at different times during any given day. I mean, absolutely you do. There's no
Yeah.
question.
And that's kind of like that's the idea presented to me about magic in terms of manipulation for me specifically, because I don't want to like actually exert control over someone, but I do want to be able to make things happen. Because like I said, like even for this case with the dog sitting, all I want the dog to know is that when I open the door for her to go outside to go to the washroom, she doesn't have to be afraid that I'm at the door, or if I give her a treat, she can eat the treat. She doesn't have to worry about my presence. That's all I'm looking for. But because I can't sit down with her, I say this for with parents sometimes they're having a hard time with their like little kids. I'm like, you can't walk up to your 2-year-old and say, I feel Aristotle said it best when he said, your child's not going to respond, yes, but Socrates said this, and therefore your argument of Aristotle does not apply here. Like you're not going to have that conversation. You have to converse on that child's level so that they understand. And since I can't really converse on the dog's level, I need an intermediary in between.
Well, those kind of things, I'm going to say behavior is your big path there because kids, dogs,
Yeah.
cats, even cats, understand your behavior more than your words. And so what they see you do will have an impact. Now, if you have some kind of magic you want to use that opens up the channels for that to be received,
Mm-hmm.
that's again, it's for the individual to decide, where am I on the spectrum, on the manipulation spectrum, and do I want to put my energy in there? So that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing that I think we touched on that last week. But when you work on something, particularly if you're creating tulpas or something along those lines,
Right.
when you put your focus on something, you're giving it your energy, which is your life force. That's
Right.
what makes you you. It's what makes you alive, is your energy. No energy,
Right.
you're not here. So how much of that do you want to put into it?
Yeah.
Again, these are questions for people to ask themselves and to consider. I don't have an answer to offer because it's your choice. I'm taking away anybody's free will. You get to decide, but be conscious. Think about it.
Right. There's a tied into that idea. I've also been having an interesting week in another way. And I don't know if it's specifically related to Manasa Devi, but she's definitely taking advantage of it. So the first part has been going on for a month or so. The whole world to me right now, like when I just let my spiritual senses out, just feels like water. It's like I'm standing in water or not floating, but well, no, maybe floating in water is a great idea, and that any movement I take will have an effect on anything else in the environment. And if I really wanted to, like if I were standing in a parking lot and I wanted to wave my hand, like that would be enough to actually displace a parked vehicle. That's what it feels like, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't do that in reality. I often get reminded that reality is not that doesn't flow that or doesn't flow like that. But that's how the world feels right now to me. When I just sit here and just let everything, like all my senses just go, that's how the world feels. Feels like I'm moving through water, but not being impeded by it, but like, that light sense of you float so you can kind of like you bounce around, you move easier, or you move there's a lighter feeling, but like you're carried and buoyed through something. Buoyed? Buoyed?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. That's what the world feels to me like right now. But what started
Okay.
this week is it's like also like I have access to the backstage of the world. That's not the perfect description. It's like, so there's the world, and then there's the stuff. I'll use the term beneath the surface, all the energy, how it's flowing and moving. And it's like when I decide to, I can affect that flow. It doesn't feel
Hmm.
like water, it feels like force, but it's like,
That sounds like a potentially big responsibility. Is that how that
yeah.
feels?
Yes, it's like when you figure this out, you're going to be able to play with that energy and have an impact.
Then you've definitely got to be aware of where you are on the spectrum when you do that,
Right.
because that's you got to be very careful. If it's going to have an impact, if there's ripples, where are the ripples going? See,
Well, that,
the easiest one to work with, I think, for anybody who wants to try and see what happens, is working with raising your vibration. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at all the things from a miserable perspective and being very negative about things, that's a low vibration, and you get more of that. So we all know the person who says, "Oh, fuck my life, everything's so terrible. I get all these bad things happen. Why is it me?" And let me down. They could spend a whole day telling you what went wrong today, right? There's all these terrible things. That's a low vibration, and they're bringing in more of the same. Those ripples are not ones that most of us would consciously choose. Then a higher vibration is one where you are being a higher vibration. You are coming, it's not when this happens, I'll be able to X. It's right now, this is what I'm doing in order to give off this higher level of energy. Because what you're sending out comes back,
Mhm.
and you attract more of it. So it's does it sound like law of attraction stuff? Sure, it does. But there's a clarity to that that yeah, it's kind of it's another spectrumy thing, right? Where are you on the vibration spectrum?
So we took a pause break there for some dog behavior. But yeah, so I'm like, but it's true, like this whole idea of once I decide to reach for it, to have access to these energies that are flowing in the universe. But the word I keep getting is facilitator, facilitator. As in, it's not manipulation. It's just setting up the events or the circumstances for things to happen. But people still have to walk into those events and still have to follow what's happening.
Right. Again, with manipulation, it's not always a bad word. It just depends on where you are on the range of manipulation, and that goes with the sort of motives and so on. So yeah, it's an interesting direction. I don't know what happened there, but one of us froze.
Yeah, you froze on me.
And you froze on me, so that was interesting.
I think it's actually on my side. I just got a thing saying that my internet was messed up. So,
Aha.
but so Manasa Devi's like, now it's back to me, to her.
Okay.
Like, so her story, all the stories about her are always about her being what's that word I'm looking for? Underappreciated, never really valued for what she is. Like, cause some of her stories are about, some of her stories seem like really vindictive, like killing someone only to resurrect them after, so that they know to not, disrespect her. Or is it there's a sage, the story of a no, not a sage, a merchant who I guess was disrespecting her and wouldn't offer up his worship to her for she had done something. So I think she killed his son or something like that, but then brought him back to show what she was capable of to the merchant and why it's dangerous to mistreat her, something like that. But there's stories like that where it's like if you don't treat her with respect, it's going to be a lot harder for you. You'll still get help, but it's going to be a lot harder and it's going to cost you to get the help.
Interesting. I did not know that story.
Yeah, and because when I was working with her this week, it was kind of sitting on my mind. But as I listened to her do her or watch her do her stuff and listen to her talk about things, it's like what you're really asking those to people to really pay attention to what value exists in the world and what's valuable to them. Because you know, disrespecting her doing a healing just because you don't think her status as a goddess is right because of how she was born, which for the listeners is there's many stories. Most of them are she either comes from Shiva's imagination, his sweat. I mean, this is marked as explicit, so she was either born just directly from his semen without an ovary or an ovum to be found. Like, there's a lot of ways that seem kind of like, I guess, unglamorous ways that she came to life. So she's seen as less than as a goddess because of it. Those are parts of her
Mm.
stories that I've been seeing, anyways. Like, there's more stories, right? But these are just the ones that I saw. But always the thing is that she's trying to say, it doesn't matter what people think of your beginnings, doesn't matter what people think you are. They have to understand your value. And sometimes you have to show them your value in a way that they won't forget.
Right. And it occurs to me that there's a parallel here. She's the goddess that's most recognized and appreciated in rural areas because
Mm-hmm.
that's where you find the snakes by and large.
Right.
And who are the people who are generally underappreciated, but those who live in rural areas, right?
Right.
You're the country bumpkin, or you're the hillbilly, or you're the whatever title, but it's usually
Right.
not very flattering, right? You're a redneck. There's all these things that imply living rurally is less
Mm.
than somebody who's
Right.
living in the city. So she's less glamorous. She's more rural than
Right.
a more, for want of a better way of saying it, city dwelling god or goddess.
Yeah.
Um, so that's just a parallel that comes to me to put out there, and I don't know if that lands for anybody else, but it holds.
Yeah. I got to pause for some doggy and man. All
So
right,
it
back once
holds
again.
true.
Hmm. So yeah, no, that's a great point though, right? Because and it's actually interesting to see a lot of stories are like that. Like, and because I've been thinking about that for the last little bit with the gods we're getting, and some are shown to have lesser status, but there's a lesson in there in why they have a lesser status for some of them. It's not because it doesn't reflect necessarily on them specifically, but on how society views things. So their stories tend to have at some point an element of showing, hey, do not take these gods for granted. They're still gods.
And I think that can reflect back on people too, because sometimes the person, who's flipping burgers, for example,
Yes.
might be an incredible author, or they might be a philosopher, or they might be a musician. They could have talents that you have no notion about, and for various reasons, that's not how you get to see that person. So because somebody's status is that they pick up the trash and,
Mm.
take that away for you, or they're a plumber or an electrician or whatever it is, we have this very interesting way of viewing people who do the most useful things, right? That's like, actually, we need those things. The person who's pushing the pen, who's got the degree, and hey, owning it right now. I have three of them, so, fair enough.
Yes.
But it's, well, four technically. Anyway, the point is that doesn't make me a better human being. And
Right.
it doesn't make me better able to do things, honestly. It just means that I learned certain stuff from certain places. But there's a status with, oh, hey, you've got a degree, therefore you're over here. You're smarter than that person who knows how to farm the land. It's like, well, I don't know, but if there's a collapse of society, I'm gonna want to hang out with the farmer myself because
Yeah.
that's where the food's at. So
Well,
our status gets mixed up. It comes
mhm.
from a faulty logic. It comes from a faulty sense of worth. And to give somebody a sense of worth because of what they do, how they appear to you, is
Right.
very shallow and can be problematic.
Yeah. It's funny because, if you look at the pandemic, who are the essential workers?
Hmm.
The people who had to
The
go
people
there
who
out in the
get
front line, run the risk of illness. Those are the people who couldn't stop working because society would fall apart.
right? And they're typically the ones who get paid the least. So again, that's
Right.
Manasa Devi,
Yeah.
where she would be valued the least, and yet, what value is gold if you're bitten by a snake?
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? And she's a healing goddess, so you would think well, that's the thing, right? It's
Well, look at how nurses and doctors are treated.
mhm.
Pick a country. I've been a nurse in four countries. None of them pay you well.
Yeah. That's the weird thing, right? But kind of what I was trying to get to earlier, it's like but regardless of how a culture works, like because if you would think, right, like so India had a caste system and it still kind of has it. It's just
Oh, it
not,
has it.
yeah,
It has it.
it's not
Yeah.
as pronounced and advertised to the world, but it's still there, right? And yet, here's the story about someone who would basically be in the untouchable class, essentially, and yet she's needed because she's a healer,
Right. And I gotta say, the
and
caste
so
system's
take
alive and kicking in India, very
yes,
much so, because there is a belief that it's your karma to be born into that caste. And so
right.
nobody tries to do anything about it, or very few people do. And it's deeply problematic, but it's an interesting example actually for somebody who's not in it to look at it and see how, and that would be in manipulation of people works,
Yeah.
right? If you convince somebody that it's their lot in life to be at this level where all they get to do is clean out sewers, then if they believe that, they're harmless to you. They're going to do the job and they're not going to fight back and say, hey, I want to do something different. You could have a
Right.
genius there.
Hmm.
So
And then once
Manasa
again, if they
Devi,
don't, and if they don't do their tasks, the rest of society falls apart.
Right. So you have them do the task that nobody else wants and give them a hard time for it. That would be
Mhm.
Manasa Devi. I'm feeling a thumbs up from her on that one.
Yeah.
That's a preach it, sister. So,
And that's
yep.
been her because part of like my conversation with her all week is I'm like, all right, well, and I've already talked to you about this before, but part of the discussion I had with her this week was the do I dislike you kind of a thing because she kind of brought to my attention like because I try to make it a pleasant experience as possible for spirits to work with me, but she's trying to get to the point of but is that genuine of you? Are you doing it because you're afraid to offend, or are you doing it because you genuinely want them to be happy around you? Like, are you
Right,
worried that they won't work with you if they're not pleased, or do you generally want to just work with them?
right. So is it a form of people pleasing that's gone into the spiritual realm, in which case, where's it coming from? That would be a good example of know yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're agreeable all the time and always say yes to people's requests and so on, then you're a people pleaser. Well, if you're doing that in the spirit world, that may end up problematic. You could end up
Right.
saying yes to a bunch of things that don't go well. Um, and again, it would be it's not superficial, but it is artificial, right? You're
Right.
doing it because it's a learned behavior. It's a thing that was drilled into you as a kid that you must do this, but it's not coming from a place of heart. It's not coming from a real space. So that's an interesting rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah.
And, discover for yourself if you're a people pleaser, you don't have to stay there.
Yeah. I just found it interesting how much this week she was about because the big describer of her is that she wants to be worshipped, she wants to be recognized, and then, but all of her work with me this week was, but do you recognize yourself?
Mhm.
And are you honest with yourself so that when you go out into the world and claim you are a certain way and you want to be recognized as that, do you not? I was going to say, did you earn it? Not did you earn, but are you legitimately that? Are you seeking acknowledgement for who you actually are and not what you think people want you to be?
Are you walking the talk?
Yes,
Hmm.
that was a big theme with her this week. That and she kind of ties it in and says everything that sounds arrogant about me is because I understand myself and I've done this work. And therefore, when I ask you to appreciate me, I'm not asking you for something artificial. I'm asking you to look at and acknowledge what I'm capable of when you ask me for something. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not saying everybody on the street has to come and worship at her temple or whatever. She's just saying when you come to me with all the respect, do what you're looking
Hmm.
for.
And I think that has a relevant parallel, very strongly, in fact, to the state of the planet right now that we are currently wading through. You have people who are demanding respect and they're demanding to be in charge of things that they have absolutely no business requesting,
Right.
because what they're saying they're doing is a lie. They're not doing any of the things they're saying. And it's it's manipulation at its lowest level, as I mentioned earlier. But
Mm.
exactly that is happening where somebody is demanding observances that they do not warrant, they have not
Right.
earned, they are not capable of putting their part in. Right? They are not that person. It's a lie. It's fabrication, and that is a problem too. If you look at the Christian thing of worshiping false gods,
Right.
that would be an example right there. It's not that you have a different deity in your sights. That's not the problem. It's putting your devotion, your attention to a hollow representation that's false. It's wrong. It's lying. And that would be exactly what's happening in politics all around the world right now, but especially in the US. 100%. And where else is that happening, right? It's as someone in south of India said to me, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, I think I've certainly told you that
Hmm.
he said, every family has their own God,
Yeah.
and you don't have to have a lot of money. You can have a milk carton and a straw, so long as you are paying attention to it. You are worshipping it in that you have your incense, you offer flowers, you literally pay attention to that thing, investing in it, that power that you wish it would have. And that's a high vibration thing again, right? So that's not a false god because you're making it real,
Right.
just like you do with magic. That's not a false god. But when usually a person, stands there and says, hey, look at me, I'm great, this is what I do, and they're lying and they don't have any of that, that's a false god.
Right. Well, that's the thing, eh? Like, even the idea, like, it made me think of "Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain." And then everyone, like, when you get mad and you hurt yourself and say Jesus Christ, that's not taking it in vain. Taking it in vain is when you're using it to lie, when you're using it
Yes,
to push a false narrative.
yes,
So a lot of people are, but people, I don't know where it came down to this, but people now use it to mean you can't express the name in a excited context, you know,
it's
but that's
controlling
never
it.
what it meant. Yeah, but it's never what it meant, right? So yeah, so like trying to control what it means when the people who are telling you not to do it a certain way are the ones actually doing the thing.
Exactly. It's a control mechanism so that while you're so busy trying not to say, Jesus Christ, would you not? You know, you're trying not to do that. So you're focused on this minutiae that
Mm-hmm.
means nothing. And meanwhile, they're up there with their TV evangelism or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, getting money from vulnerable people. That is taking every name you can think of in vain. I mean, that is an affront to any person or deity. Like that whole thing is so bad. I hope there's an extra low layer of hell for them because what they're doing is intentional and like it crosses everybody's lines of what is acceptable. To the best of my knowledge, I can't think of a deity, I can't think of a religion that says that's okay. And yet, so many of the leaders do precisely that. That's where you have worshipping false gods, right there.
Yeah, it's why, like, on the one hand, right, I don't encourage anyone to have a religion, but on the other hand, when I hear people complain about religion, it's like, okay, first really look at what it says and look at what, like, I always tell people there's the thing and there's the culture around it. So look at the culture around it. Like, what I found, like, uh, again, the pandemic is a good example of things. There's the actual science, and then there's the culture everyone built around the science of how the pandemic worked. So, you had everyone, and then everyone was saying, no, no, this is the science. Like, no, no, this is how you're culturally taking in the science, but it's not the science itself that's telling you that. Because to my understanding, like, people have revealed things they hadn't intended to, like the testing methods not are done at certain parts of the pandemic when the waves were high and low, and then saying, well, uh, this vaccine is considered a higher reliability than this vaccine, but then they weren't tested at the right time. And this was meant to be an argument to refute that people were saying the vaccines aren't tested properly. And I'm like, so what you're telling me is the number that everyone is quoting isn't as accurate as it could be because it was done during a lull. And then the other one with the lower percentage of success that people say don't take was actually being tested during a high of exposure. So it's like, yeah,
There's a manipulation for you.
right.
Now, was it done with good intent or not? My mind immediately says to me it was probably done for financial purposes.
Mm.
But, the vaccine companies, who's paying the money to the politicians the most? And that's very cynical of me, and I stand by it. Absolutely. But it's that's I think where we've lost religions have lost the reality of what it means to blaspheme or to worship false gods. It's it's not what we've been told, right? It's not the rule book that you need to follow or else. No, 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 no. It's the bullshit that's being fed to you. And you're so busy following the little rule book that they get away with it. But that's the
Yeah.
problem. And that's when things go wrong. I mean, in the US right now, we have the alt-right who are, in very heavy air quotes, Christian. And,
Mm.
poor Christ to be having a cow right now, to think that these people. Now, if ever there was a thing that's taking Jesus' name in vain, it is them. Every single
Yeah.
day, it is them. I mean, they are. There was literally a scene where there were senators praying over the big
Mm.
blasphemous bill. I
Yeah.
think we can call it that. They're praying over it for it to be passed. That's one of the worst examples that I can think of. These people are taking money away from healthcare. They're condoning concentration camps for people with brown skin.
Mm.
And even if they're US citizens, like there isn't even, it's not because they're not working, it's not because they're criminals, it's just straight up
Right.
because they're brown. Like, what? What? And they pray over this, right? So yeah, you want to talk about blasphemy and false gods? Right there.
Yep. And that's, yeah. It's funny because Manasa Devi's appreciating the wording. Like I said, I can't stress this enough. This was a big thing this week about knowing yourself and being very honest about things that you're perceiving and paying attention to, the why, the everything. It's like it was hyper focused this week on it.
Hmm.
And and honestly, right, if you're going to travel in magical circles, it's a good thing to do because if nothing else, right, the more honest you are, the better your flow. It's the basic truth of it. The more you lie, the more you interrupt your flow because you're trying to manipulate your flow so that you can get an outcome or send a specific image of yourself. And it's intuitive to do that. So you're preventing your flow of your magic that way because you're putting limits because you're only trying to reveal so much. So you're not letting the power totally shine through.
Right. And if a person's feeling the need to lie, then that's a great opportunity to stop and consider why. What
Mm-hmm.
what is creating that? What is the need that prompts you to do that?
Yes.
uh, this
Had to let a
I
dog
was
out.
about to say this might get cut out, but dogs. And not mine, by the way. Not my
Nope.
dogs this time. Usually
No,
it's
I
me.
am dog sitting. So yeah. But yeah, like it's it's funny how much it comes back to being honest with yourself when you're doing magic.
Mhm. Yes. And frankly, when you're doing anything, but yes,
Mm-hmm.
you have repercussions with magic. So as I guess you do with behaviors as well, right? But just being honest with yourself should be a basic requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And we've said many times before about your motivation and um, your intention. These are all parts of being honest with yourself, is to be clear on that. And here's the
Yeah.
things in society these days, actually, I think in society for hundreds of years, really, we're worried about what are other people going to think? What, is it acceptable to be who I am? Do I
Mm-hmm.
have to pretend otherwise because other people won't like me? And that again is a falsehood. It's
Right.
it's inaccurate because frankly, even if other people don't like you, you got no control over that. They might not like you because, oh, I don't know, if you're in the US, maybe because you're brown and your last name is
Mm-hmm.
Gonzalez, right?
Right.
Like that apparently is enough. This person could be a medical doctor or a lawyer or a plumber or whatever, and it makes no odds because somebody has deemed them unworthy based
Yep.
on their birth, Manasa Devi, right?
Mhm.
Like someone
Yeah.
has taken some facts that they could have no control over and said, okay, these people are not worthy. Now
Yeah.
what
She's
the
very
hell is
excited
that?
about this. Yeah. She's excited about this part of the conversation. Your
Okay.
birth should not equate to value.
Well, it
And that's
doesn't.
her
It
message.
can't.
Yeah.
It cannot. It's a nonsense. It's as much nonsense as saying, well, this person was born to that one and in this bed, and therefore they're a king.
Right.
And this one's a queen. And this one is never going to amount to anything because their parents were, trash. Well,
Right.
wow. Like, no. We all have a starting place and you can fulfill your potential, whatever that looks like, right? So
Yeah.
your value is not where you were born or what color you are or any of those things. It can't be. It doesn't make sense. It's nonsense. It cannot
Right.
be.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, this is very exciting to her. And
It's also a question of contribution, right? Like, are you contributing something of value? And are
right.
you being recognized for that? Because if we contribute value and then everybody takes that for granted, nobody likes that feeling. Any
Right.
projectors, human design, any projectors that are listening to this will absolutely know that. Because if you're a projector and you volunteer your help, it will not be well received. You will not be recognized for it, and you feel really, really badly. And it's like, well, that was horrible. I'm not going to do that again. Okay. Actually, if you're a projector and you're listening to this, good. Don't do that because you need to be recognized and acknowledged for what you can do. If
Hmm.
if I was to say Manasa Devi had a particular kind of human design, I would say projector because she has these abilities and she can see what's necessary and she can offer it and she can do it, but she needs to have the recognition and be received. Otherwise, energetically, it doesn't land. It's not a I need to be patted on the back because my ego needs it. No, it's just for that energy flow, that recognition needs to happen.
Right. It's funny. So Michaela's seeing my eyes closed. So what's happening is, so Manasa Devi wants to say this. I am Manasa Devi, and these are the words I wanted you to hear. I want you to go forth into the world, and I want you to see the truth of who you are and what it does for the world around you. I don't want you to shy away. I don't want you to hide. I want you to take charge of who you are, and I want you to light the world with your light, or sorry, with your life. And some word I don't understand, and I don't know if I can pronounce. So for her, that's her part. We've got the message across. We've said it. We've got it. And now she's like, you know how we made the analogy of, with APEP, right? It's time to learn a new thing, and then you push, and then the mother bird pushes the birds out so they can fly. Well, she's
Mhm.
also doing that to me. She's pushing me out of the nest. So she's done.
Much appreciation.
Yes. She did the whole bowing and the thank you. So she's still pushing. What is she looking for? This is the joy of channeling. Sometimes your own expectations get in the way of the message.
I don't know, but I just got chills, which is kind of interesting. It's a hot day here today, and I just got chills.
Mhm.
Hmm.
All right. So she stepped back. I actually like this part because it's the listeners get to actually see what's happening or hear what's
Well,
happening.
at least.
So now the next god showed up.
And who do we have?
Okay, so very large, male presenting, seems very cosmic. It's got the whole kind of you kind of see the stars in them in the night sky, the cosmos.
Hmm.
So this is a primordial god. I've been kind of thinking like it showed up yesterday because normally the handoff happens on Saturday and today's Sunday. My first thought was there's an Egyptian god that created the universe, right? I don't know if there's like a big egg or anyways, but that's not him. But that's the first one that came to mind, but it's not him. I don't even know what pantheon to think about.
I'm getting Greek.
Ooh, oh, do you know who it is? Kronos.
Okay. Yes.
I have no idea how Kronos ties into this because there is a pattern as far as I can tell, but so this should be interesting. So I'm going to learn stuff about the Titan Kronos I didn't know. The Titan of Time, and probably like a million other things. Father of a lot of the gods, or father of Zeus, anyways, if I'm not mistaken.
The powerful Titan king and god who ruled before the Olympians. So,
Right.
and a picture I have right here is exactly how you just described. Um, Using a sickle. Oh dear. Cronus castrated and defeated Uranus and then imprisoned the Cyclops and Heca Hecatonchires. I have no idea who that is. Cronus's reign was a time of virtue and peace where people didn't need laws.
Hmm.
Interesting. And fearing prophecy that his son would overthrow him, he swallowed
Right.
each of his children except Zeus. So his
Yeah.
father was Zeus.
Yeah. Yeah. His father, that's for sure the one I know. Well, that's going to be interesting.
And Cronus was identified with the Roman god Saturn.
Right.
So the Titan god of time, specifically time as a destructive, all-devouring force,
Hmm.
and also the god of the harvest. So we seem to be getting some destructive destructive places here. Hmm.
But saying that he's the god of, you know, both the time instructive time, but also the harvest. So it's almost you would think the message is reaping.
Or a circle,
Yeah.
right? You harvest and then you have to plow everything in again. So
Yeah.
destroy what's there in order to replant and grow again.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
because you have like love goddesses that are also war goddesses.
Oh, absolutely.
So
There's duality in everything. I
yeah.
mean, you don't have there's no god or deity, goddess, however you want to phrase it. There's none that have only one
Well,
aspect.
that's
None.
right. There's a lot of aspects. Like
I mean, Persephone is one of my favorites.
yeah,
You know, Persephone is quite something. 6 months of the year with Hades and six
right.
months of the year up on the planet.
The
You know,
meter,
that's
mother.
yeah, it's a very clear difference, right? A very clear duality.
Yes. It's yeah. Yeah, I wasn't sure for the last day. I was trying to figure out like, but I didn't want to get ahead of myself. I wanted to do this episode. I didn't want to like try to figure out who it was, even though I had like
Right.
a
And
presence,
and
but
she's Kronos' granddaughter,
yes.
Persephone.
Hmm.
Just mention that. Seeing as she came up for me.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. That'll be the second Titan I work with because my dragon necklace is blessed by Gaia, who is also a Titan in Greek mythology.
Hmm. Yeah, and funnily enough, Greek mythology isn't something I'm particularly familiar with, and it um doesn't generally resonate for me that much. There
Yeah.
are other directions that I go in. I'm absolutely willing to learn what's coming, but it's not my area of expertise by any means. It's not even my area of vague knowledge, honestly. So
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So Manasa Devi's gone. Like I just have like the after kind of,
Hmm.
her lingering awareness or her lingering presence. Like, just the okay, just as she's leaving, so her her leaving presence is still kind of here, but it's gone now. It's not, she's not gonna be interacting anymore. But that one, this has been an interesting week already with with Manasa Devi. Now, oof, let's see what Kronos brings. Wow. Like
Well,
that.
that's a pretty big energy from what I gather. So that's going to be.
Yeah.
We're both going to have an interesting week this week, I think.
Yeah. Oh, he says he'll be sure to give you something.
I'm not sure if that's good. I
Yeah.
guess I'll
Well,
find out.
for the listeners, it's interesting. So when Manasa Devi, when the episode was over and we had a little chat, she was like, "You're probably not gonna like this week, but it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be healing and all that kind of stuff."
Right.
So on that note, this episode is over, and then can't wait to see what happens during this week. So once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time, and also remember, be true to yourself and learn your values.
Yes.